I was standing in a supermarket parking lot in Denver, holding a screwdriver, about to fix Megan's broken taillight. It was one of those quiet errands that didn't mean anything at the time. She had texted me earlier, said the light went out on her way back from a showing. I told her I'd take care of it after work. That's what I did. Small things. Maintenance. Keeping life moving. Her car was still warm when I got there. She'd left the keys in the glove compartment, like she always did when she trusted I'd be the one opening it. I remember thinking that habit said something about us. About routine. Stability. I opened it without thinking. Inside, under the registration and a pack of gum, there was a phone. Not hers. Not the one I saw every day. This one was smaller. Plain. Already on. Warm in my hand. No passcode. Just one screen. One contact. Tyler. No messages open. No clutter. Just that name sitting there like it didn't need explanation. I didn't scroll. I didn't press anything else. I just stood there in that parking lot, screwdriver still in my other hand, and felt something settle into place. Not shock. Not even anger. Recognition. Because in that moment, I understood something clearly. There was no version of this that went back to normal. Before that moment in the parking lot, our life looked the way people expect it to look when nothing is obviously wrong. I worked construction. Long days, early mornings, predictable problems. You show up, you fix what's in front of you, and by the end of the day, you can point to something solid and say, you did that. Megan's world was different. She was in real estate. Flexible hours, constant movement, always somewhere new. Open houses, client dinners, networking events. She called it building relationships. Said that's where the real money was. I believed her. Our schedules didn't always line up, but that wasn't unusual. If anything, it made things feel balanced. I handled what stayed still. She handled what moved. We didn't fight much. Not in any way that stood out. No loud arguments. No slammed doors. Just small disagreements that ended before they turned into anything real. From the outside, it worked. Even from the inside, it mostly worked. But there were details. The kind you notice without wanting to assign meaning to them. Her hours started shifting first. Not dramatically, just later than before. A showing that ran long. A client who could only meet at night. Then networking events that seemed to multiply. Seminars in other cities. Weekend workshops she said were important for growth. She started using phrases like leveling up and next-tier clients. I didn't question it. People change how they talk when they're focused on something. Then came the phone. Not the one in the glove compartment. The one she carried every day. It was always face down now. Always within reach. If it buzzed, she'd glance at it quick, just enough to register something, then turn it slightly away before answering. Sometimes she'd step into another room. Sometimes she'd stay but lower her voice like the conversation wasn't meant to travel. Again, I didn't question it out loud. I told myself it was work. Clients. Deals. Pressure. That's what made sense. There were other things too. New routines. She started going to the gym at times she never used to. Bought clothes I hadn't seen her wear before. Nothing extreme, just different. More intentional. She paid more attention to how she left the house than how she came home. And when she came home, there was a distance I couldn't measure directly. Not cold. Not hostile. Just unavailable. Like part of her stayed somewhere else. I noticed all of it. I just didn't connect it. Because once you connect it, you have to decide what it means. And up until that parking lot, I wasn't ready to do that. After I closed the glove compartment, I didn't fix the taillight right away. I stood there for a minute, the screwdriver still in my hand, looking at nothing in particular. Cars moved around me. Doors opened, closed. Someone laughed a few rows over. Normal sounds. Regular pace. But something had already shifted. Not outwardly. Nothing visible changed in that moment. Just the way things connected. I put the phone back exactly where it was. Same position. Same angle. Closed the compartment. Then I fixed the light like I came there to do. Took me less than 5 minutes. By the time I was done, I had already decided one thing. I wasn't going to ask her about it. Not then. Not later that night. Because questions would force answers. And answers, at that stage, would only be controlled versions of something I had already seen clearly. So I drove home like nothing happened. When she got back, she thanked me for fixing the light. Kissed me on the cheek. Same tone she always used. Same casual rhythm. I watched her while she talked. Not suspicious. Not aggressive. Just paying attention in a different way. That was the real change. Before, I noticed things and explained them. Now, I noticed things and left them alone. That night, her phone buzzed while we were sitting on the couch. She picked it up, glanced at it, and flipped it face down again. Same move I had seen 100 times. But now it wasn't just a habit. It was part of a pattern. Over the next few days, more pieces started lining up. Her late nights weren't random. They fell on the same days every week. Tuesday, Thursday, sometimes Sunday. Her routes didn't always make sense either. She'd mention one part of the city, but her gas usage, the timing, it didn't line up clean. Not wrong enough to call out, just off enough to register. Messages would come in and disappear faster than before. Not deleted in front of me, just gone by the time I had a chance to see anything. Even her explanations started repeating. Same phrases, same structure. Last-minute meeting. Client needed reassurance. Deal almost closed. Individually, none of it proved anything. Together, it stopped feeling random. I didn't chase it. I didn't check her phone. I didn't follow her. I just watched. And the more I watched, the less confusion there was. Because once you stop explaining someone's behavior for them, you start seeing it exactly as it is. If you've made it this far, this story clearly caught your attention. If you're enjoying it, drop a like on the video. It helps me see what kind of stories you want more of next. Let's keep going. The shift didn't come with a single thought. It wasn't a decision I sat down and made. It was quieter than that. It happened somewhere between noticing the pattern and realizing I didn't feel the need to interrupt it anymore. I didn't feel anger. That was the part one kept checking for, like it was supposed to show up eventually. Some reaction, some pressure building up that needed to be released. But it didn't come. What replaced it was something more stable. Clarity. I stopped trying to fix anything. That had been my default for years. If something fell off, I adjusted. Changed schedules. Suggested time together. Asked if she was stressed, if there was something I could take off her plate. I didn't do that anymore. Not because I was holding back. Because it no longer made sense. You don't fix something that isn't breaking by accident. You observe it. That's where I moved. I stopped looking for the right moment to talk. There's always that idea. You wait until things calm down, until you can sit across from each other and have a real conversation. I let that go. Because conversations require two people operating on the same version of reality. And we weren't. I didn't build theories either. No late-night spirals. No connecting dots beyond what was already visible. I didn't need to guess where she was going or what she was doing. The structure was already there. Repeating days. Repeating behaviors. Controlled communication. That was enough. What changed most was internal. I stopped placing myself inside her decisions. Before, everything she did still had a reference point that included me. Even when it didn't make sense, I tried to understand it as something connected to us. That connection disappeared. Not dramatically. Not in a single moment. Just quietly removed. Like stepping out of a room without closing the door. I still lived in the same house. We still had the same routines on the surface. Dinner. Conversations. Shared space. But I wasn't participating the same way. I wasn't reacting to tone shifts. I wasn't filling silences. I wasn't trying to read between lines that no longer mattered. I let things sit exactly as they were. And in doing that, something else became clear. This was no longer my life the way I had understood it. Not partially. Completely. Whatever version of it I had been maintaining in my head was already outdated. And once I accepted that, there was nothing left to argue with. I wasn't being pushed out. I had already stepped out. The rest was just time catching up to that fact. Once I stopped reacting, I had space to see things more clearly. Not bigger things. Not dramatic moments. Just repetition. That's what made it solid. Her schedule didn't drift anymore. It repeated. Tuesday nights, she was out until after 10. Same explanation every time. Thursday, almost identical. Sundays were inconsistent on the surface, but even those started forming a pattern if you watched long enough. Usually tied to networking or prep for the week. I didn't question any of it. I just kept track. Not on paper. Not on my phone. Just mentally. The way you remember job timelines without writing them down. You know when something starts, when it shifts, when it doesn't match what was planned. It was the same process. Her calls changed too. She started taking them in the car more often. Engine off, windows closed, sitting longer than necessary before coming inside. I'd hear the car door open, then close again. A pause. Then finally, footsteps to the front door. When she came in, she'd act like she had just arrived. Like the time in the car didn't exist. I never mentioned it. There were small financial details as well. Nothing loud. No big purchases. No obvious red flags. Just small charges. Places she never talked about. Coffee shops across town. Restaurants in areas that didn't match where she said she was working. Gas usage that stretched beyond her usual routes. Individually, it was nothing. Together, it was consistent. And consistency doesn't need interpretation. It just needs acknowledgement. Her behavior around me stayed controlled. Not colder. Not warmer. Measured. Like she had already adjusted to a version of our life where certain things didn't need to be shared anymore. That part stood out the most. There was no panic in her. No sense that she was worried about being found out. Which meant one of two things. Either she believed I wasn't paying attention, or she had been doing it long enough that it felt normal. I didn't try to decide which one it was. It didn't change anything. I also didn't increase my presence. No checking her phone. No following her. No testing her stories. Observation only works if it stays clean. The moment you interfere, you change the pattern. So I left everything untouched. Days passed like that. Then weeks. And by the end of it, I didn't have a single piece of dramatic evidence. No confrontation moment. No message that spelled everything out. What I had was something more stable. A system. Repeated behavior, aligned timing, controlled communication, and physical gaps that matched too precisely to be accidental. That was enough. Because once something becomes consistent, it stops being a possibility. It becomes structure. And structure doesn't need to be proven. It just needs to be seen. Up to that point, everything stayed contained inside my own observation. It was just me, her, and a pattern that didn't need to be explained out loud. But that changed the moment I decided to look at one detail more directly. The name. Tyler. I hadn't touched that second phone again. Didn't need to. That one word was enough to work with. Names don't exist in isolation. Not in her line of work. Real estate is built on connections, introductions, shared spaces. If someone mattered enough to be the only contact on a separate phone, there would be overlap somewhere else. I started with what I already knew. Her seminars. The trips she mentioned. The events she talked about just enough to sound routine, but never enough to be specific. One of them stood out, Austin. She had gone there a few months back. Said it was a high-level networking weekend. Stayed an extra day because flights were cheaper. At the time, I didn't question it. Now I just looked closer. Public photos. Event pages. Speaker lists. That's where the name connected. Tyler Brooks. Investment coach. Regular speaker at those events. Clean image. Polished presence. The kind of person people describe as high value without thinking too much about what that means. Married. That part wasn't hidden either. His wife showed up in the same circles. Same events. Same photos. Which meant this wasn't something separate from their environment. It existed inside it. I didn't feel anything when I confirmed it. No spike. No reaction. Just alignment. The name from the phone wasn't abstract anymore. It had a place. A face. A structure around it. And more importantly, it extended beyond me. This wasn't just something happening in the gaps of my schedule. It was part of a larger pattern that included other people who believed they were operating inside something legitimate. I didn't expose anything. Didn't reach out directly. Didn't send messages or make calls. That wasn't the point. Information doesn't need to be forced to move. It just needs to be placed where it can't be ignored. So I made one small adjustment. Anonymous. Precise. Not an accusation. Just enough to connect 2 points that weren't supposed to be connected publicly. After that, I stepped back again. Because once something exists outside of you, it no longer depends on you to continue. Questions start forming on their own. People notice inconsistencies when they're given a reason to look. And I didn't need to manage any of that. I had already stepped out of the center of it. Whatever followed wasn't something I needed to control. It was just something that had already begun. The conversation didn't happen because I initiated it. It happened because she felt something change. Not in what I said, but in what I stopped doing. I wasn't asking where she was going anymore. I wasn't following up on her day. I wasn't filling space with small talk that kept things feeling normal. At first, she adjusted around it. Then she started watching me the way I had been watching her. That's when she brought it up. We were sitting at the kitchen table. Late evening. No TV on. No background noise. Just the kind of silence that used to feel comfortable. Now it felt measured. She leaned back slightly, arms folded, not defensive, just positioned. "You've been acting different," she said. I didn't answer right away. I let the statement sit where she placed it. "Different how?" I asked. She held my gaze for a second longer than usual. "Distant. Like you're somewhere else." I nodded once. Work's been steady, I said. It wasn't an answer. She knew that. That's not what I mean, she replied. You don't ask me anything anymore. I looked at her for a moment, then down at the table. There wasn't anything to clarify. She shifted in her chair. Are you upset about something? No. The word landed flat. Clean. No edge to it. That seemed to bother her more than if I had raised my voice. She leaned forward slightly now. Because if something's wrong, you can just say it. You don't have to shut down like this. I didn't respond. Silence has weight when the other person isn't used to it. She filled it quickly. You've been overthinking things lately, she said. Reading into stuff that isn't there. That was the first move. Not direct. Just placed. I stayed quiet. She continued. You're imagining patterns. I can tell. You've become paranoid. The word hung there. It was the kind of label meant to reset the frame. Shift the focus from behavior to perception. I didn't challenge it. Didn't agree either. Just let it exist without reacting to it. She watched me closely now, trying to measure something. What do you think is going on? She asked. I looked at her again. Not confrontational. Not searching. Just present. I don't think anything, I said. That wasn't what she expected. People prepare for arguments. For denial. For pushback. Not for absence. She sat back slowly. The confidence in her posture adjusted. Not gone, but recalibrating. So everything's fine? She asked. I nodded once. Yeah. Another flat answer. No extension. No invitation. She looked at me longer this time. And in that moment, something registered for her. Not what I knew, but what I wasn't doing. I wasn't asking for explanations. I wasn't trying to resolve anything. I wasn't participating in the version of the conversation she understood how to control. And that was enough. She didn't press further. Didn't need to. Because when someone realizes you're no longer operating inside their structure, they understand more than anything you could say out loud. And for the first time, I could see it clearly. She wasn't adjusting the story anymore. She was trying to understand the silence. And that's where her position started to shift. After that conversation, I didn't change anything. That was the point. I didn't increase pressure. Didn't pull back further. I stayed exactly where I was, present, but not engaged in anything that required explanation. And then things started moving on their own. At first, it was small. She mentioned fewer events. Not because they stopped, but because she stopped offering details. Where before she would give just enough to make it sound routine, now she kept it shorter. Busy day. Long meeting. Late showing. Less structure. Less confidence in how it sounded. Then came timing shifts. She started coming home earlier on days that used to run late. Not consistently, but enough to break the pattern she had been following for weeks. Tuesday didn't always go past 10 anymore. Thursday became unpredictable. That kind of disruption doesn't happen without a reason. Something external had changed. I didn't ask. I just noticed. Her phone behavior shifted too. Still face down. Still close. But she checked it more often now. Not casually, deliberately. Like she was expecting something, or watching for something that hadn't settled yet. Once or twice, I saw her scroll longer than usual, then lock the screen without responding. That hadn't happened before. There was hesitation where there used to be rhythm. Outside of the house, things were shifting as well. I heard it indirectly. Not from her. From the edges. A mention from someone at work who had connections in real estate. Nothing specific. Just that things were getting complicated around certain networking groups. Names weren't used. They didn't need to be. A few days later, I noticed her on a call in the car again. Engine off. Windows closed. Same as before, but this time, it ran longer. 15 minutes. Maybe more. When she came inside, her tone was controlled, but tighter than usual. She didn't bring it up. Neither did I. Then came the first visible crack. She canceled a weekend trip she had been talking about for weeks. Said the event was postponed. No follow-up details. No frustration. Just removed. That's when it was clear. Whatever had been running smoothly before wasn't contained anymore. It had started extending beyond her control. And once that happens, the structure changes. Stories stop aligning. Timing gets inconsistent. People start adjusting in ways that don't match the original pattern. I didn't act on any of it. Didn't push. Because none of this required intervention. The process had already started. I hadn't created it. I had just stepped out of the way. And now, without needing anything from me, it was continuing on its own. There wasn't a moment where everything collapsed at once. No confrontation. No final argument that pulled everything into the open. It moved the way structures fail when the support is already gone. Quietly, then all at once in small pieces. She started packing before she said anything. Not everything. Just sections. A drawer cleared out. A few hangers missing. Shoes that didn't come back after a trip. If I hadn't been paying attention for weeks, I might not have noticed it happening. But I saw the pattern even there. Gradual removal. One evening, she came home earlier than usual. No call in the car this time. No delay. She walked in, set her keys down, and stood there for a second like she was deciding how to begin. I was sitting at the table. Same place as before. Same position. She didn't sit right away. "I think we need some space," she said. The sentence was structured carefully. Neutral. Practiced. I nodded once. Okay. No follow-up question. No resistance. That seemed to throw off her timing more than anything else. She hesitated, then continued. "I'm going to stay somewhere else for a while. Just until things settle." Another pause. Waiting for something from me. I kept my posture the same. "That makes sense," I said. Again, flat. Direct. She looked at me longer this time, trying to find a reaction that wasn't there. "You're not going to ask anything?" she said. I met her gaze. No. That was the first honest answer in the room. She shifted her weight slightly, then looked away. There was nothing left to adjust. No version of this where she could reframe it, soften it, or guide it into something mutual. It was already decided. Not by her leaving. By me stepping out weeks before. She nodded once, more to herself than to me. "All right," she said quietly. After that, it became practical. We spoke about logistics. What she would take now. What she'd come back for later. Bills. Accounts. Timing. No emotion attached to any of it. Just structure. She moved out over the next few days. No scenes. No last conversations. Just a gradual clearing of space. By the end of it, the house felt exactly the same physically. But there was nothing left in it that belonged to what we had been. We didn't check in. Didn't circle back. The communication stayed limited to what was necessary. And once that was handled, there was nothing left to continue. No loose ends. No unresolved questions. Just a full stop. Sometimes it doesn't take a conversation to understand what's already finished. It takes a detail. A name on a phone that wasn't supposed to exist. That was enough. Not because it proved everything, but because it removed the need to keep explaining things that no longer made sense. I didn't uncover anything dramatic. No confession. No moment where everything was laid out clean. Just patterns that stopped hiding once I stopped looking away. People think the truth arrives loud. It doesn't. It settles in quietly, long before anything changes on the surface. And once you see it clearly, there's nothing left to argue with. I didn't win anything. I didn't lose anything either. I just stopped participating in something that had already moved on without me. And in the end, that was the only decision that mattered. I didn't expose it. I didn't chase it. I didn't try to fix it. I just stopped denying what had already happened. That's the end of this story. If you made it all the way here, consider subscribing to stay with us. I've placed a couple of recommended videos on screen for you. Pick one and keep watching. I'll see you in the next story.